The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, shattering the fragile peace of my morning. I knew they were coming today, but knowing and being ready are two entirely different things. I stood in the kitchen of the small house my mother had left me in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, the damp Pacific Northwest air seeping through the old window frames. The coffee I had been pouring nearly spilled as my hand jerked at the sound. On my kitchen calendar, the words "financial decision" were circled in red marker, a reminder that today would either mark my liberation or my complete surrender. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. I took a breath and walked to the front door, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I opened it, my father, Richard Evans, stood there with that smile, the one that never quite reached his eyes. It was wide and practiced, the smile of a man who had learned to use charm as a weapon. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. Beside him stood Victoria, his second wife, 20 years his junior, and dressed immaculately in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She clutched a black leather briefcase to her chest like it contained something precious, something that belonged to me. I stepped aside to let them in, though every instinct screamed at me to slam the door. Victoria's eyes immediately began cataloging everything in my modest living room, noting the scratch on my coffee table, the stack of unopened mail, the worn couch that had been my mother's. I saw the judgment in her expression, the barely concealed contempt. "You look stressed, dear," Victoria observed, her tone suggesting that my stress was somehow a personal failing. "I am fine," I said, keeping my voice level. "Can I get you something to drink?" "No need for that," Richard said, already moving toward my kitchen table. He set the briefcase down with a heavy thud and opened it, revealing a stack of documents that seemed impossibly thick. "We do not have time to waste on pleasantries, Chloe. Just need you to sign here, and everything will be taken care of. We have a long day ahead of us to sort through all these tedious formalities." I stared at that briefcase and felt my carefully laid plans threaten to crumble under the weight of years of conditioning. For so long, I had been the obedient daughter, the one who tried to keep the peace, who absorbed their criticism and manipulation because I desperately wanted my father to love me the way he had loved my mother. "Let me just get some water," I said, my voice shakier than I wanted. "And you are sure you do not want anything?" I moved to the kitchen, using the moment to steady myself. My hands trembled as I filled a glass from the tap. I touched my purse hanging on the back of a chair, feeling for the envelope I had prepared, the one marked "Help Emmy" in letters small enough that only someone looking closely would see. Inside was a detailed account of everything, every manipulation, every threat, every warning sign I had ignored for too long. The manipulation had started slowly after my mother died 2 years ago. At first, Richard had seemed genuinely concerned about me, offering to help manage the estate, to guide me through the complicated financial aftermath of her passing. I had been drowning in grief, barely able to function, and I had been grateful for his help. But help had quickly morphed into control. He started showing up unannounced, going through my mail, questioning my decisions. Victoria would make pointed comments about how I was wasting my inheritance, how I clearly did not understand money, how lucky I was that they were looking out for me. The subtext was always clear. I was incompetent, irresponsible, incapable of managing my own life. 3 weeks ago, I had found documents Richard had left in his car during one of his visits. They were drafts of a power of attorney that would give him complete control over everything I owned. Not financial guidance, not help with paperwork. Complete, total control. The ability to sell my house, drain my accounts, make every decision about my life without my consent. That discovery had been the catalyst I needed. I called my brother Daniel, who lived in Seattle. Daniel had distanced himself from Richard years ago, after our father had tried to manipulate him out of his inheritance from our grandfather. Daniel had seen through Richard's charm long before I had. To his credit, Daniel had not said "I told you so" when I finally called. Instead, he drove down the next day, and together we met with a lawyer who specialized in elder financial abuse. Yes, I was only in my early 50s, but the tactics were the same. We established a living trust, making Daniel and me co-trustees. Every asset I owned went into that trust, protected from anyone trying to claim power of attorney. But we kept it secret. We needed evidence, documentation of Richard's intentions. We needed to catch him in the act. And today was that day. I returned to the table with my glass of water, trying to project a calm I did not feel. Richard had already spread some of the documents across my kitchen table, and Victoria was watching me with those calculating eyes. "So this power of attorney," I said slowly, trying to sound uncertain rather than informed. "This gives you complete control over my house and my bank accounts?" Richard's smile tightened slightly. "Chloe, sweetheart, do not make this more complicated than it needs to be. This is just a formality to help you. You do not understand these financial matters. This is the best way to protect you." "Protect me from what exactly?" His expression hardened for just a moment before the smile returned. "From making mistakes. From people who might take advantage of you. I am your father. I only want what is best for you. We should get to the bank," Victoria interjected, checking her expensive watch. We have an appointment at Rose City Trust downtown. They are expecting us. The drive to downtown Portland was one of the most tense 30 minutes of my life. Richard drove his luxury sedan through familiar neighborhoods, past the trendy shops of the Pearl District and the old houses of Nob Hill. He kept up a steady stream of conversation about nothing, about the weather and new restaurants and traffic patterns. But underneath every casual comment was an undercurrent of control, a reminder that he was orchestrating this entire day. "I have taken care of you since your mother died," he said as we crossed the Burnside Bridge. "You need to trust me, Chloe. I know what I am doing." Victoria turned in her seat to look at me, the documents in her lap. "This power of attorney is very comprehensive, Chloe. It covers everything. Your property, your finances, even healthcare decisions if needed. It just means we can handle things if you are ever incapacitated or need help. Which, let us be honest, you do." "So you want total authority to make decisions about my house and my money," I said, no longer bothering to hide the edge in my voice. Richard laughed, but it was forced. "You make it sound so sinister. We are family. This is what families do for each other." I looked out the window at the Willamette River passing below us, gathering my courage. I know how to take care of myself. The car swerved slightly as Richard hit the brakes harder than necessary. "What kind of attitude is that? Are you questioning your own father's motives?" Victoria's voice dropped to something cold and threatening. "If you do not sign these papers, Chloe, we will have to reconsider whether we can continue helping you at all. We would not want to waste our time on someone who does not appreciate what we are trying to do." The threat was clear. Sign over control or be abandoned. It was emotional blackmail, and I recognized it now for exactly what it was. I did not respond. I just clutched my purse tighter, feeling the outline of the envelope inside, and reminded myself that I had a plan. Daniel knew where I was. The lawyer knew what was happening. And Sarah Chen, the branch manager at Rose City Trust, had been briefed about potential financial elder abuse cases by Daniel's attorney friend. Everything was in place. I just had to hold on a little longer. Rose City Trust occupied a modern glass building in downtown Portland, all sleek lines and an atmosphere of corporate efficiency. As we walked through the doors, Richard placed his hand on my lower back, in a gesture that might have looked protective to an outside observer, but felt controlling to me. Victoria walked on my other side, effectively boxing me in. Richard approached the reception desk with his most charming smile. "We have an appointment with Sarah Chen. Richard Evans, here to help my daughter with some important financial documents." The receptionist made a call, and within moments a woman appeared. Sarah Chen was in her early 40s, Asian American, with an air of calm professionalism. But I noticed the way her eyes moved, taking in the dynamic between the three of us, lingering for just a moment on my arm where Victoria had gripped it tightly in the car, leaving faint red marks. "Welcome to Rose City Trust," she said warmly. "I am Sarah Chen, branch manager. You must be Mr. Evans, and this is your daughter Chloe?" Her eyes met mine, and I thought I saw something there. Recognition, perhaps. Concern. "Please follow me to my office." The office had glass walls, offering both privacy and visibility. Richard and Victoria positioned themselves on either side of me again, creating their protective barrier. Richard pulled out the documents with a flourish. "We need to finalize a comprehensive power of attorney for my daughter. She has been struggling with managing her inheritance, and we want to make sure everything is properly handled." Sarah's expression remained neutral. "Of course. Before we proceed, I will need to see identification from everyone involved. This is standard procedure to protect our customers." As she collected our IDs, I made my move. With hands I forced to keep steady, I pulled out my wallet and identification. As I did, I allowed the envelope to slip from my purse, sliding it underneath my stack of documents as if it were just another piece of paperwork. The envelope was small, but on the outside, in letters large enough to be noticed, I had written "Help Emmy." Inside was everything, a detailed letter explaining the coercion, the threats, the manipulation. Copies of suspicious withdrawals from my accounts that I had not authorized. Photos of previous bruises from when Victoria had grabbed me too hard, thinking no one would notice or care. Sarah gathered all the documents, and I saw her eyes flicker to the envelope. Her expression did not change, but there was the slightest furrow of her brow. "I will just make copies of these IDs in the back. Please make yourselves comfortable." The moment she left the office, Richard turned to me. He pushed a pen across the desk. "Just sign it, Chloe. Stop making this more difficult than it needs to be. We do not have all day to sit in a bank." Victoria's hand clamped down on my wrist, her manicured nails digging into my skin hard enough to hurt. "Just one signature, Chloe. Just one little signature and all your problems go away. Think about how much easier your life will be when you do not have to worry about these difficult decisions anymore." I tried to pull my hand away, but her grip tightened. My face went pale, but I kept my voice steady. "I want to read through the document carefully first." Richard slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. "Read what? I have already explained everything. You just need to trust your father. Why are you being so difficult?" "Because I am not stupid," I thought but did not say. "Because I know exactly what you are trying to do." Because 3 weeks ago I saw the truth, and I cannot unsee it. Victoria leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper that only I could hear. You know what happens to ungrateful daughters, Chloe. You know how alone you will be if we walk away. No one else cares about you. No one else will help you. The words were designed to wound, to make me feel small and helpless and dependent. And they might have worked, once. But not anymore. Sarah Chen returned at that moment, and I have never been more grateful to see another human being. She placed the documents on the desk, but notably, she did not hand me a pen. Instead, she looked directly at me, her expression kind but firm. Miss Evans, according to our updated Know Your Customer regulations, I need to speak with you privately for a few minutes. This is a mandatory procedure for all significant financial transactions. Richard's facade cracked. What? That is ridiculous. She is my daughter. I need to be here to explain things to her. She gets confused easily. Sarah's voice did not waver. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Evans, but this is bank policy, not a negotiation. I need to speak with Miss Evans alone to ensure she understands what she is signing. You and Mrs. Evans can wait in the lobby. It will only take a few minutes. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is completely unacceptable. We drove all the way here. We have other appointments today. Then you will need to reschedule those appointments, Sarah said calmly. If you would like to proceed with any transactions at this bank, you will need to follow our protocols. Please wait in the lobby. Before Victoria left, she turned to give me one last look. It was a look of pure venom, a silent threat that promised consequences for this delay. When the door closed behind them, I felt like I could breathe for the first time all morning. Sarah sat down across from me and pulled out the envelope I had hidden in my documents. Chloe, she said gently, I read your note. Are you being coerced into signing these documents? The dam broke. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. Yes, they want everything. My house, my savings, complete control over my life. My father has been manipulating me since my mother died, and Victoria, she hurts me sometimes. I showed her my wrist where fresh marks joined older bruises. Has this been happening for a long time? 2 years. Since my mother passed away. They have been systematically taking control, making me feel like I cannot manage without them. But I found documents showing they plan to sell my house and keep the money. I thought if I cooperated, if I was a good daughter, it would get better. But it just kept getting worse. Sarah nodded slowly. Chloe, you mentioned in your note that you established a living trust 3 weeks ago with your brother Daniel as co-trustee. Is that correct? Yes, I said, relief flooding through me. That is my safety net, but I am so scared they will find out. Sarah picked up her phone. You did the right thing. Now I am going to do mine. She dialed a number. This is Rose City Trust, downtown branch. I need Portland Police Department to respond to a case of attempted financial exploitation and suspected document fraud. I have evidence of attempted power of attorney fraud with potentially forged notary seals. The perpetrators are currently in the building. Through the glass wall, I could see Richard and Victoria in the lobby. They were trying to appear casual, but their body language was tense. Richard kept checking his phone. Victoria kept glancing back toward the office. Within minutes, I heard sirens. 2 police officers entered the bank, and Sarah stepped out briefly to speak with them before gesturing for Richard and Victoria to return to the office. The look on my father's face when he walked back in and saw the police was something I will never forget. All his practiced charm evaporated, replaced by barely concealed panic. What is going on? Why are the police here? Sarah remained perfectly composed. Mr. Evans, in reviewing your documents, we have discovered some irregularities. This notary seal, for instance, appears to be fraudulent. She placed the power of attorney on the desk and pointed to the notary section. I had not even noticed before, but the seal was smudged, the signature barely legible. It looked rushed, fake. That is impossible, Richard sputtered. You are making this up. She is confusing you. He pointed at me, his fingers shaking with rage or fear or both. One of the officers, whose name tag read Ramirez, stepped forward. Ma'am, are you Chloe Evans? Are you all right? I stood up, feeling strength flow through me that I had not felt in 2 years. Yes, I am Chloe Evans, and I want to report multiple instances of coercion and financial manipulation. I pulled up my sleeve, showing them the marks Victoria had left. These are from her. She has done this before, and my father has been threatening me, manipulating me, using my grief to control me. I pulled out my phone, showing them the app I had been secretly running. I have been recording everything since we left my house this morning. Every threat, every attempt to coerce me, every manipulative statement. You cannot, Victoria started, but her voice died as the reality crashed down on her. Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Moreover, Mr. Evans, it is important you understand that Miss Evans established a living trust 3 weeks ago. Her brother Daniel Evans is co-trustee with her. All of her assets, including her home and financial accounts, are protected within that trust. Any power of attorney document you present would be irrelevant and legally unenforceable. I watched my father's face as he realized his entire scheme had fallen apart. Months of manipulation, of slowly tightening his control, of positioning himself to take everything, all of it had been for nothing. "You cannot do this to me," he said, but his voice had lost all its authority. "I am your father. You stopped being my father the day you decided I was something to be exploited rather than someone to be loved," I said quietly. Officer Ramirez was already reading them their rights. The other officer, Chin, moved to handcuff Victoria, who had started crying in a way that seemed calculated for sympathy, but only made her look more guilty. "This is all a misunderstanding," Richard tried one more time. "She is confused. The medications she takes, they make her paranoid." But his words rang hollow. The evidence was there in black and white, in the recordings, in the forged documents, in the bruises on my arm. As they led my father and Victoria through the bank lobby, past curious customers and shocked employees, Richard turned back to look at me one last time. His expression was one of pure hatred, the mask finally completely dropped. In that moment, I saw him clearly for what he truly was, a man who had never loved me, who had only ever seen me as a resource to be used. I met his gaze without flinching. For the first time in my life, I did not look away first. I did not apologize. I did not try to make peace. I simply stood there and watched him face the consequences of his choices. After they were gone, I sat down heavily in the chair, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and relief. Sarah handed me a tissue and a bottle of water. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you go home. You change your locks. You document everything for the police report. You work with your brother and your lawyer to make sure all your assets are completely secure. And you start rebuilding your life without people who hurt you." She paused, then added more softly, "I see cases like this more often than you would think. Adult children being exploited by their own parents. It takes tremendous courage to fight back. I do not feel courageous. I feel exhausted. Courage is not the absence of fear," she said. "It is acting despite the fear. You did that today." Daniel had been waiting at a coffee shop 2 blocks away, ready to come if I called. When I texted him that it was over, that Richard and Victoria had been arrested, he was at the bank within minutes. He pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "I am so sorry I was not there for you sooner," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are here now," I replied. "That is what matters." We drove back to my house together, and Daniel immediately got to work. He called a locksmith and had all the locks changed within hours. He installed security cameras at the front and back doors. He checked every window, every entry point, making sure my home was truly secure. While he worked, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where this nightmare morning had begun, and I wrote a letter to my father. Not the kind of letter I would have written before, full of apologies and attempts to understand. This letter was different. "Dad," I wrote, "I loved you. I wanted your approval so badly that I let you hurt me. I let you manipulate me. I let you make me feel worthless. But I am not worthless. I am not incompetent. I am not the confused, grieving daughter you tried to convince me I was. What you tried to do today was theft. It was abuse. It was a betrayal of everything a parent should be. You will never control my finances, my home, or my life again. If you try to contact me, if you come to my house, if you make any attempt to manipulate me, I will file additional charges immediately. This is goodbye. Not with anger, though I have every right to that, but with clarity. You taught me what I do not want to be. Thank you for that lesson at least. I did not sign it with love. I signed it simply with my name. The legal proceedings took months. The charges against Richard and Victoria were serious: attempted fraud, forgery, coercion, and financial exploitation. There would be a trial eventually, and I would have to testify. But for now, I was free. Free to walk through my house without looking over my shoulder. Free to open my mail without fear. Free to make decisions about my money and my future without second-guessing whether I was capable. Daniel stayed with me for a week, helping me sort through practical matters and providing emotional support. We talked about our mother, about our childhood, about all the ways Richard had hurt us both over the years. It was painful but also healing to finally speak these truths out loud. One evening, as we sat on my small back porch watching the Portland rain, Daniel said something that stayed with me. "You know, I was angry with you for so long for defending him, but I understand now. You were trying to keep our family together. You were trying to be loyal. Those are not bad instincts. You just needed to learn that loyalty to yourself has to come first." He was right. I had spent so many years trying to be a good daughter, trying to maintain peace, trying to believe that family meant unconditional acceptance of any behavior. I had confused love with submission, loyalty with self-sacrifice. Never again. Through everything that followed, I worked on rebuilding myself. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma and financial abuse. Dr. Patricia Wong helped me understand the patterns of manipulation I had endured, helped me see that my natural desire for my father's love had been weaponized against me. She helped me understand that setting boundaries was not cruel but necessary, that protecting myself was not selfish but survival. I also reconnected with friends I had drifted away from during the years of Richard's increasing control. I had not realized how isolated I had become until I started reaching out again. Some friendships had faded beyond repair, but others welcomed me back. I joined a support group for survivors of family financial abuse. Hearing other people's stories, realizing I was not alone, that others had faced similar manipulation and had survived, that gave me strength. Slowly, carefully, I built a life that was truly mine. About 6 months after that day at the bank, Richard's case went to trial. I had to testify, had to sit in a courtroom and detail every manipulation, every threat, every way he had tried to control me. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done, but I did it. I spoke my truth in a clear voice, and I watched him try to maintain his facade of the wronged father, the man who had only tried to help his confused daughter. The jury did not believe him. The evidence was too overwhelming. The recordings, the forged documents, the testimony from Sarah Chen, the medical documentation of my injuries, all of it painted a clear picture. Richard was convicted. He received a suspended sentence with probation and was ordered to stay away from me. Victoria received a similar sentence. They lost their chance to control my life, but they did not lose their freedom entirely. Part of me wished for harsher punishment, but mostly, I was just relieved it was over. A year after that morning, I sat in my house and thought about how far I had come. The house was mine, truly mine now, with new locks and security cameras and a sense of safety I had not felt in years. I had rebuilt my credit, reclaimed my identity, and learned to stand on my own. I thought about my mother sometimes, about what she would think of everything that had happened. I liked to believe she would be proud of me for finally standing up for myself, for not letting her husband destroy what she had worked so hard to leave me. I still lived in the same modest house in the Portland suburbs. I still worked the same job. My life was not glamorous or extraordinary, but it was mine, and that was everything. I had learned that family is not just about blood. Family is about respect and trust and genuine care. Daniel was my family. The friends who stood by me were my family. The support group members who understood my pain were my family. And most importantly, I had learned to be family to myself, to protect myself, to value myself, to recognize my worth independent of anyone else's approval. On the anniversary of that day, I did something I had been putting off. I drove past the house where I grew up, the house where Richard and Victoria had lived before everything fell apart. It had been sold during the legal proceedings, purchased by a young couple with a baby. I saw them in the yard, the father pushing a stroller, the mother gardening. They looked happy, peaceful. The house looked different somehow, lighter, as if the darkness that had filled it during my childhood had finally been exorcised. I hoped they would be happy there. I hoped that house could be redeemed by genuine love. As for me, I was building my own future, one day at a time. I had started taking classes at the community college, working toward a degree in social work. I wanted to help others who were trapped in situations like mine, to show them that escape was possible, that survival was possible, that rebuilding was possible. I also started volunteering at a local organization that helped victims of elder financial abuse. I shared my story when it might help someone else find courage. I had learned that my experience, as painful as it was, had value if it could light the way for someone else. Sometimes people ask me if I have forgiven my father. The honest answer is no, and I may never forgive him. But I also no longer carry him with me. He does not occupy space in my thoughts the way he once did. He is not the lens through which I see myself anymore. I had learned something crucial through all of this. I learned that I was stronger than I ever knew, that I could survive things I never thought possible, that I could rebuild myself from nothing and become someone I was actually proud of. The Chloe who had stood trembling in her kitchen that morning, terrified of her own father, she was gone. She had been transformed by fire into something harder, something resilient, something unbreakable. I still had hard days. Days when I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I should have given him another chance. Days when the grief of losing my father, even a father who had hurt me, hit me unexpectedly. But those days were becoming fewer, and they were vastly outnumbered by the good days. Days when I woke up in my own home and felt nothing but gratitude for my freedom. Days when I made a decision without second-guessing myself. Days when I looked in the mirror and saw not a victim but a survivor. If I could send a message back through time to that woman standing in her kitchen, hearing that doorbell ring, I would tell her this: hold on. You are stronger than you know. The fear you feel right now will not last forever. On the other side of this terrible day is a life you cannot yet imagine, a life where you are valued and seen and free. That is the message I carry now, as I live my quiet life in my small house in Portland. The scars are still there, emotional wounds that may never fully heal. But they have transformed from open wounds into proof that I survived. I am not the same person I was before. How could I be? But I am not less. I am more. I am harder where I need to be, softer where it matters. I am wiser, more careful with my trust, but also more grateful for genuine connection when I find it. And I have found it. The world is full of broken people, and we find each other in the wreckage, and we help each other rebuild. That is what I learned from the worst period of my life. You can survive the unsurvivable. You can rebuild from nothing. You can transform pain into purpose, betrayal into wisdom, manipulation into independence. I am Chloe Evans, and I am no longer my father's victim. I am a survivor. I am someone who crawled through darkness and came out the other side, not broken, but unbreakable. And if there is someone out there right now, sitting in their kitchen, hearing that doorbell ring, feeling that dread, I want them to know, you can survive this. You can fight back. You can win. Your life is yours, and no one has the right to take it from you, no matter who they are or what they claim to want for you. That is my truth. That is my story. And I stand in it, whole and healed and free.